Guys, you know what time it is, because as it seems your insatiable hunger for the horrifying eldritch creations of the Cthulhu Mythos is more ravenous than the gluttonous maw of Shub-Niggurath herself, the black goat of the woods with 1,000 young. Truth be told, if we could, we'd continue this list for as long as Azathoth himself remained in eternal slumber, because there's nothing more enriching and entertaining than arduously attempting to pronounce the names of some of the most bizarre creations in Lovecraftian fiction, whilst having some horror-fueled fun in the process. And believe it or not, if you've been a fan of this series since its inception, there's much more where that came from. Hello horror fans, what's going on? And once again, welcome back to the Scariest channel on YouTube, top 5 scary videos. As per usual, I'll be your horror host Jack Finch, as today we curiously take a look at the top 5 scariest Lovecraftian monsters, part 5. For the curious amongst you, that scene was from John Carpenter's 1995 classic, In the Mouth of Madness, and whilst it's not Lovecraftian per se, it served to inspire one of the most accurate depictions of cosmic anomalous creation in the whole of horror cinema. After all, do you read Sutter Kane? Nevertheless, it serves to set the foreboding scene for this top 5 scary Lovecraftian list, and if you're in the mood for some cosmic horror, there's so much to be enjoyed in the Mouth of Madness. Oh, and as always, there'll be no Cthulhu on this list in particular, because if we can do 4 parts without him, then 5 should be a breeze. Anyway, on that note, on with the show. Kicking off at number 5, Sirach Ho. And whilst we've previously plunged into some of the more horrifying monstrous races in Lovecraftian fiction, we have to also give note to the terrifying ghouls, and their even more ravenous and grotesque progenitor, Sirach Ho, the father of all ghouls, also known as the prowler amongst the tombs. In the expanded universe of the Cthulhu Mythos, little is described about the nature of the elder gods, who are thought to have served as the deities of many earthly religions, but are in fact eldritch abominations themselves. Now, there's a lot of incestuous crossover when it comes to the lineage of cosmic horrors, but it is thought that Sirach Ho is a direct descendant of Cthulhu himself, who then went on to mate with another descendant of Cthulhu, the elder god Bast, in order to create the cultish race of ghouls who now lurk in the shadows of Earth and the tumultuous dreamlands, worshipping whichever cosmic horror that they can get their hands on. Yeah. It's pretty messed up. Although his appearance has never been outwardly described, Lovecraft himself penned mention of Sirach Ho in many of his correspondences, and tied the relentless progenitor to many other vile creations of the mythos, such as Kabar the serpent and Gnoth the burrower, who was alluded to have been created after Sirach Ho seduced and mated with a Roman noblewoman, Vibernia, an actual historical figure who just so happened to be the legendary ancestor of Lovecraft himself. Again, yeah, it's pretty damn messed up. I mean, I'm not entirely sure whether I want to know more about Sirach Ho or whether I'm thankful that he never made it out of the confines of Lovecraft's letters. Either way, Sirach Ho, in fictional terms or otherwise, just so happens to be the actual distant ancestor of Howard Phillips Lovecraft. Yeah. Coming in at number 4, the Flying Polyps, which is a fun phrase to say, isn't it? And no, these guys aren't a miraculous group of trapeze artists and tightrope walkers traveling the world in a pop-up circus, but instead one of the most inherently vile races of aliens in the wider Lovecraftian universe. As described in The Shadow Out of Time in their first and only appearance, they were a horrible elder race of half polypus, utterly alien entities which had come through space from immeasurably distant universes to dominate Earth alongside 3 other solar planets about 600 million years ago. They first colonized Earth before the arrival of the great race of Yith, the only cosmic entities to keep record of the terrifying alien mysteries, who were notably evasive on describing them, making fearful references but shying away from any actual description. We know that they are capable of flight despite having no wings or appendages to do so, and seem to demonstrate an innate propensity to control air currents for offensive manipulation purposes. Although airborne, they also seem to leave behind a strange 5-toed radial footprint wherever they went, a disturbing footnote that features in The Shadow Out of Time. The Flying Polyps first built immense and vast cities out of basalt in their new territory of Earth, where they dominated the planet as an aggressive and predatory species before coming into contact with the technologically superior Yithians millions of years later. After a bloody and violent war, the great race of Yith prevailed, although they only managed to force the polyps back to their subterranean catacombs that lay deep beneath their basalt cities, sealing off the tunnels in an eternal tomb, where they now presumably wait to be released. Yeah, that's often the case with Lovecraftian fiction, isn't it? Don't look down. Next up at number 3, Scarlet. And if you have a particular fear for giant earwigs and centipedes, then you're probably going to want to look away for this fleshy Lovecraftian entity. Also known as the Ravenous One, Scarlet is a gigantic insectoid larva-like horror that dwells deep within the nebulous realm of Kgilmnon, a galaxy of pure cosmic nightmare that was first introduced in the 1998 publication His Hour Upon the Stage by J.B. Lee. Although written outside the timeline of most of the Lovecraftian expanded universe, Scarlet seems to exist in stark opposition to the outer gods of Azathoth and his brood, and also seems to suggest that the life forms progenited by the nuclear chaos weren't the only creations in the infinite mystery of the universe, which is a terrifying notion in itself, isn't it? After all, if Scarlet wasn't created by Azathoth, the origin of all cosmic horror, where did it come from? Scarlet is an alien entity of unimaginable power, with its most prominent abilities being mind manipulation, telepathy, omniscience, immortality, and perhaps even the potency to warp reality itself. In the pantheon of the Yog-Sothothery, it is suggested that Scarlet may even rival Nyarlathotep in power, and it is thought that the Ravenous One is as old as reality itself, giving light to the fact that Scarlet may be a Lovecraftian entity like no other, opening up the pathway to an infinite realm of terrifying possibilities. In his nightmare galaxy, Scarlet is worshipped by an insectoid race known as the Gowroids, alien parasites that seem to possess a diminished supernatural portion of their god's power. It is thought that Scarlet created the insectoid servant race from his own flesh purely to serve him, as the Gowroids are one of the only cultist races in the Cthulhu Mythos that thrive alongside the god that they worship. Swinging in at number 2, Daleth. And this one is a pretty difficult horror concept to accurately portray, and like many of these Lovecraftian entities, as well as the wider anomalies of the Cthulhu Mythos that have expanded upon them, the true fear of Daleth lies in the implication of its design. Also known as the Render of Veils or the Parter of Veils, Daleth is a member of the Outer Gods, a collection of perhaps the most powerful cosmic horrors in the universe, brothers and sisters of the all-knowing and all-slumbering Azathoth, the blind idiot god. And much like Azathoth, as well as the nameless mist, Daleth dwells within a dimension beyond that of our comprehension. Daleth's worship is incredibly rare on Earth, as even the most fanatical of cultists have never even heard whispers of his name, but instead the Outer God is worshipped by a small sect of astrologer priests in the forgotten corners of the cosmos, and their zealotry and devotion to him reward an unimaginable power. Those that successfully worship Daleth are said to be able to see the past, the future, and even the minute gateways where objects extend and travel between different dimensions. Where that power comes from is anyone's guess entirely, because the actual eldritch function of Daleth is of immeasurable complexity. Daleth can only be summoned in pitch black darkness by his cultists, as his vast and indescribable shape causes even the most devout worshippers to go mad at the sight of him. If that's not existentially terrifying enough, if he's not held within the confines of some kind of magical containment, the Render of Veils will continue to expand, perhaps even at an infinite rate, and those enveloped by the god are transported to a bizarre remote world of impossible design where they quickly die a horrible death. Created by Ramsey Campbell and appearing in his short story The Render of Veils, Daleth is perhaps one of the most mysterious entities in Lovecraftian fiction, and that's saying something. And finally, coming in at our number 1 spot, the High Priest Not to Be Described, which, although it sounds like a pretty unnecessary title, perhaps may be one of the most mysterious creatures in Lovecraftian fiction. And I know that I've said that quite a bit throughout this mystery-inducing video, but you'll soon find out just exactly why. In Lovecraft's 1926 novella The Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath, Randolph Carter finds himself thrust into the chaotic and horrifying world of the Dreamlands as he flicks between eldritch realities, stumbling upon a whole host of horrifying and bizarre creation. At one point, Carter is captured and taken to the plateau of Leng, where he is taken down through a labyrinth of tunnels deep beneath the bowels of the Dreamlands and is forced into an audience with a creature known only as the High Priest Not to Be Described. Although in direct disregard for its title, the creature is described by Lovecraft as a lumpish figure robed in yellow silk, wearing a similar silken mask that communicates only through a bizarre and unsettling ivory flute. Instantly, Randolph Carter knows that the creature he is staring at is a horror of unimaginable power, and quickly loses his mind after fleeing and throwing one of the High Priest's servants down an impossibly deep pit. Although only brief in appearance, many have speculated as to the true origin of this High Priest, with the majority suggesting that Hastur, the King in Yellow, is the prime suspect. However, that doesn't explain the fact that this story was written before August Daleth made the connection between Hastur and the Yellow King, and the High Priest priest's yellow silken robes are thought to be merely a coincidence. Others have claimed that the most likely suspect is the crawling horror himself, Nyarlathotep, although to counter that, it's important to note that Nyarlathotep appears elsewhere in this novella directly described in his pharaoh form, leaving us to scratch our heads as to who the hell this horrifying high priest actually is, and what Randolph Carter saw to inspire such unfathomable fear. It seems that in the Dreamlands there may be entities that are more unimaginable and terrifying than even the outer gods themselves. Well, there we have it, horror fans, our list for the top 5 scariest Lovecraftian monsters part 5. Look how far we've come. Eh? What do you guys think? Do you agree with our picks, or do you have your own top 5 list of your own? Let us know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Before we depart from today's video though, let's first take a quick look at some of your more creative comments from part 4 of this Lovecraftian series. First up, Bernard Mulligan says, well done on the names, Jack. I usually don't even bother when I read the stories. I just think fleshy thing or insect fish. Wow, that seems like a pretty decent tactic, Mr. Mulligan. I'll have to give that one a try when an outer god has a name longer than 20 characters, because that's just, you know, that's just impossible. Next up, John Marble says, love as always. You could make a whole channel for Lovecraft and then I would basically just explode. Well, that's very much appreciated, John. Thank you, but please don't explode. On that note, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for in today's video. Just stick around all the way until the end. If you were a fan of this video or just top 5 scary videos in general, then please be a dear and hit that thumbs up button as well as that subscribe bell. And I'll be seeing you in the next one. As per usual, I've been your horror host, Jack Finch. You've been watching top 5 scary videos. And until next time, you take it easy.